Hello, my name is Jimmy, and today I'll be interviewing Hanna. And do you have any questions or concerns before we begin?
I do not.
Okay, so Hanna, what would you say are some unique characteristics of your family?
Um, I guess the first one would be that I do live in a split family, so it definitely makes my family a little bit different. My mom is remarried, and her and her husband, they're very busy people. They do a lot of traveling together, but they've still, even though they only really see each other once a week, they still have like a really strong connection. And so I feel like I have a really close connection with them, and it's kind of always been like a really nice bond to look up to. And then for my dad's side, I guess something unique about my relationship with my dad and his girlfriend is they're both very much outdoorsy, and so a lot of the times like we'll do a lot of hikes together. They value nature really highly, and they both do a lot of like wilderness hikes. I guess both sides of my family kind of hold a wanderlust to them as well, so it's
Okay,
a characteristic that they passed to me as well.
and so where's your family located? So, because you mentioned about traveling, like you,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned about your mom traveling a lot. I mean, were you traveling as well, or were you more stationary?
I travel as much as I can. Like I'm located in Mankato. My family, both of my parents live north of the cities, and then my mom lives primarily up in northern Brainerd, Minnesota.
Okay,
And so I do spend a lot of time traveling with them. Whenever they can take me, they try to take me with, especially my mom. And then I do a lot of just individual traveling on my own. I've lived in a couple different states, so I've
okay.
gotten to know a lot of people. So I like to do a lot of visits when I can.
That's good. Traveling is always nice to meet new people. So would you say that would you say traveling is a hobby for you?
It's more of I would view it more as a lifestyle
Okay.
rather than a hobby. Just because I work so I can travel, and a lot of the times, especially that I'm in college and I'm not necessarily in my career yet, um, it's really kind of a way of life. And I'm going on a really long backpacking trip this summer, and it's just kind of it's who I am, and it's
Oh,
what I really want to do. I definitely want to be a traveling nurse someday, so it's definitely something I want to keep in my life forever.
oh, where are you traveling to?
This summer, I'm going to Alberta. I'm going on a 5 week backpacking trip with a friend of mine that's never been camping, so it should be interesting. But we're going through the Rocky Mountains in Canada.
Wow, it's exciting. And so, how did you interact with your environment when you were growing up with your neighborhood that you lived in?
Um, Growing up when my parents were still together, we lived in more of the rural side of our town, and I spent a lot of time with. Well, when I lived in Minnesota, I spent a lot of time with the neighbors that were usually about half a mile away or so, and we'd always get together and go make trouble through the woods or whatever. Sports were really important to my family growing up, especially being in a smaller elementary, middle, and high school. We held football and hockey and lacrosse pretty close to us too. I also played soccer, um, and so there's a lot of community with us since it was a small town. Everybody kind of knew everybody's business, so
Mm,
it was definitely a raise a village, like it takes a village to raise a child mentality.
wow. So, would you say that you're still active in your current community as you was when you were younger?
Are you talking about my community back home or here?
Here in Mankato.
Um, I would say I'm pretty active here. I'm a member of Greek Life on campus, and so I've got about 500 people that know my name, know everything about me, and we have a really big sense of community through Greek Life here, and we do a lot of volunteer work together. So I would say I'm more active than most, as much as I can be as a nursing student, I guess.
Okay. So you said that you don't see traveling as a hobby. So what are some of your hobbies?
Um, Kind of a difficult question. I guess one thing that would be partial hobby, partial work is I train horses. So I guess horseback riding would
Okay.
be another. It's a big part of my life, but I guess it would also be considered a hobby. I do a lot of volunteer work through Greek Life and through other organizations, and that's been a big part of my life as well. Um, do like reading whenever I get the chance to. Also, Netflix is a good hobby of mine whenever I get the chance to as well.
Okay. So you'd say that just being in the nursing program and um, being a part of Greek life, do you still have time to balance everything out as
Um,
much as you'd like?
Definitely not, but it's a journey that I think I've gotten better as the months have gone on in the program. I think I've gotten better at balancing my life out, but it's difficult and it's going to be difficult for the next year and a half, but it's definitely worth it
So
to do
just
it.
learning along the way what works and
Mm-hmm,
things like that.
definitely.
Coffee
Lots of
helps.
coffee.
So, as you're saying, you're learning about different things that work with your time management. Are there any other teachings that you've learned over the past couple years? Any other lessons that you think have really shaped who you are?
Um, I guess a big one is definitely learning how to be like a curious student and not being afraid to ask questions in class when I have a question about something. And I guess it's transferred over to my real world life as well outside of school, just always being very curious about what's going on around me. My curiosity drives like my hobbies of traveling. I love to see different places. So that's been one. And then I guess the empathy that we learn through so much of nursing that is such a big ideal for nursing. Just not necessarily learning empathy because it's something I think of myself as a person, but I guess learning how to express it.
Learning how to express yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably a big thing that you've learned.
Definitely.
Okay. Okay. And in terms of your family, do you feel like you express yourself differently around your family as you would here in Mankato in school?
Um, I think so. My school, I really think of like my Greek friends and my nursing friends as like another family, and I'm definitely more open with them. And I think it's just because I see them more often. Unfortunately, I don't get to see my family very often. It's really once a month that I get to see either of my parents, and that's pretty rare. But I just feel like we're not quite as close as we could be or as we once were, which is okay. We're all very busy people, but I definitely am more open with my friends in Mankato.
Okay. So when you do see your family, who would you say is the primary caregiver when you go home?
Um, it's definitely two different sides since I definitely have a very split family. So my mom would be my mom's side, and my dad would be my dad's side for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. And at the end of the day, is there a side of the family that you connect with more or less?
Um, Not really my biological side. I don't, if I have like questions or concerns or if I need some wisdom, I don't usually go to them. I will call my mom's father, so my grandpa on my mom's side, every once in a while if he's up and at him for advice or wisdom, since we've always been close. But usually I just go to my friends in Mankato for any advice that I would need.
Okay. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have two older brothers. They both live in Washington and Oregon, and unfortunately, we don't get to see each other much. I'm seeing them this summer, but we don't quite have that relationship. They're both 7 and 9 years older than me, so we don't
Okay.
have. We're not as close, but if I ever need something, they would always be there.
Okay. So would you say that growing up, were they kind of like the protective older siblings?
Um, Not so much. They were mostly. I mean, when I was growing up, they were really doing their own thing at that
Okay.
point. When I really started to remember them, they were in middle school and high school, so they were kind of busy with their own lives. So I guess I didn't really have that older protective brother, but we were still like we had a good relationship growing up still.
Okay. Okay. And so, what would you say some healthy traits of your family are?
I guess a big thing in my family is we're very active people. Like I was saying, my dad's a big hiker and sailor, and we all love fishing and hunting. So we've always taken that in as like a very serious aspect of our lives, and so we've always been very physically active. As far as like mentally healthy, and communication, we're not quite as healthy as we could be, I think.
Okay.
I've learned a lot more communication skills, like living in Mankato, and when I first went to college off in Montana, I learned a lot more communication with my friends there, and a lot more healthy ways to communicate.
Okay. So, does your family have any beliefs or traditions in terms of health? I mean, apart from being, you said being physically active
Mm-hmm.
is the main thing. Are
I
there any
guess
others?
that would be a main thing. Both my parents are varying levels of, like, spiritually. They have various levels of religion. My dad's more typical. He goes to a non-denominational church, and he finds that to be like a very big tradition in his life. My mom was raised Catholic, as was I, but she doesn't follow it as much as she used to. Um, I'm actually not sure how often she like attends church, but I guess personally, um, I guess I find a good healthy tradition to be like volunteering. I volunteer for a church group sometimes in Mankato, and I think that's going to start to be one of my traditions that I'm going to pass on to my children, is like volunteering and showing God's love and everything through the service of others.
Okay. And do you? What about your extended family? Do you have contact with them?
I do. My mom's side is very, very large, and so I'm not in contact with all of them, but there's about 8 girls that are within 2 to 3 years of my age, so I do get to spend some time with them for holidays, and they all live mostly in Wisconsin and Minnesota, so
Okay.
every once in a while, like once a year, we'll meet up and just get together. So I have that relationship, and then my dad's side is a little bit smaller, and I don't really see them quite as often.
Okay. And so you're talking about your family here in Mankato.
Mm-hmm.
What are some healthy activities that your Mankato family that you participate with? Because you said that your biological family is more physically
Mm-hmm.
active and doing. And so, what about your Mankato family?
I guess with my Mankato family, so my big, the big piece of what I would consider my family would be my sisters in my sorority, and so I guess one example I could tell you about is we have one meeting a month where we all get together and we basically pass around a candle, and whoever is holding the candle kind of gets to talk. And they can talk about good things in their life, they can talk about bad things that they maybe need some help with. And it's just kind of a time for us to like listen to what everybody has to say and really get to know like what people are going through, because everybody's going through something, and so it's a good time for us to just love on each other and like pray for each other if need be, or send each other vibes and just really be there for each other. And that's been something that's been very beneficial, I think, to everybody in my chapter.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you for your time today, Anna.